So, Carl, welcome back. We're going through some of the history of what you've done, and we've talked a bit about some of the early days in ABT, the fact you never missed an event in nearly 10 years before you took off to the USA. Back in the day, the real pinnacle for fishing in Australia was making the Australian Fishing Championships, or the AFC TV show. You had to win a grand final or be an Angler of the Year. It was a real high bar we set to get in there, and we had a pretty solid bar at the bottom as well. Like, if you came last, we booted you out. And as you found out, it didn't matter if you were Timmy Morgan or Carl Jocumsen, mate. If you were last, you were out.
Yeah.
Take us through some of your highs and lows of AFC, mate. I know you've had some incredible highs. You've had some pretty big lows as well. So let's start with the highs. Tell us about your best season on AFC.
Yeah, I tell people over here, and I tell the stories a lot, is like AFC and ABT, but AFC set me up over here. Like, this is why I've been able to be successful over here. And because people say, like, you might say, like, oh, it was a lot smaller, or it's nowhere near as big as over here. That wasn't the case for me. That was like, being a pro was like everything, through school, and teachers and people and everything always told me that, like, I'm never going to get anywhere fishing. It's not going to. So I had so many people to prove wrong, and I had no backup plan. This is what I'm going to do. No doubt, everything in my heart was like, I'm going to be a professional angler for the rest of my life, where every single person's telling me I can't. Well, when I would fail, those failures felt like I just let everything and everyone and everything around me down. It wasn't like I was fishing a little tournament with 20 people at Electric Comp. It was do or die for me, like, from really young. It was, and so those successes or the lows they felt to me like a guy winning the Bassmaster Classic. It was absolutely no different, because the money wasn't really in my mind. It was all about those accomplishments and making it and proving myself right in so many different ways. So the biggest thing that AFC did for me were the cameras and the helicopters and the boats and all of that stuff. There was so much pressure then. The world, it felt, in Australia was watching, and I was 18 or 19, I think. Maybe I was like 20, 21 when I first made it. And so those pressures and all of that, that's what set me up to be successful over here, because when I got here, I'd seen it all before. And then when I did make it and the cameras were in my boat, in my face, I welcomed it, because even back then when AFC started, it was finally, I was like able to show people, like, look how cool fishing is. Look, we're on TV. There's helicopters. We've got bass boats that are doing, 70 miles an hour. Like, it was finally looking how it looked in my mind, and I could show people, like, look how cool fishing is, because through school it just wasn't cool, and it sucked to be that guy that just loved fishing, but no one sort of understood it. And football and all the other things were the cool things. Well, AFC was the start of all of that turning around. And so it wasn't me fishing a tournament. It wasn't it was literally like life or death. That's how it felt to me. Yeah. Like, that's what the pressures were. And when I finally made it AFC, it just was always like, I always had to, like, now I've got to step up. Now I've got to win. Now I've got to stay in there. And those pressures and all the things that came with all of those years just kept making me grow as an angler and a person and everything. It taught me so much. And, that I haven't looked at it for a while, but the win at Lentils is definitely one of the best.
Was it in season 2 or season 3? Was that your first ever win? Might have been season 2.
It was the first ever bass season.
Yeah, season 2, that would have been.
I think we fished Boondooma, and I came fourth, so last. And so I was, like, devastated. So we go to Lentils, and, I had my practice, and then that's when I caught him on that top water, and I've still got him. I just dug through. I've still got that Zara spook, the chartreuse and green one. And I caught those fish, and we came in, and I didn't know, and I looked at the scales, and, like, you see my reaction, and when I just jump and go crazy, and that's just so real, because it just meant so much to me then. And then, just, it was all about just proven. I was always like the young guy. You don't know as much as the old guys, but I'm like, I've fished way more than all of these guys, like even the older guys. Like, so I always had something to prove and always wanted to prove people wrong that were telling me that I couldn't do it, or I wasn't good enough, or I was too young, so those pressures are always just making me like drive further and further. And the same thing happened when I came here. It was a big, huge step. But those foundations had been built so strong for 10 years of competitive fishing non-stop that it just built the blocks for me not to fail over here no matter what. You know, success was always going to happen because I'd already had all of those sort of formulas set. And then when I failed here, I was like, it wasn't as bad because I was like, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to get better, and I'll get better next year, and I'll win the next year. And that kept happening until, you know, I became, you know, the angler I am now and have that trophy. And you know, it still hasn't stopped here. There's still tons to do.
Awesome, mate. For me, one of the highlights was in this season 3 of AFC, and we've got all of these episodes going live on our YouTube channel as soon as this show is finished. So if people want to watch the series where you won 4 events in a row and pissed off Harry Watson so bad because he just wanted to beat you all the time and he couldn't, you had the 4 events here. There were 2 in Queensland and 2 in New South Wales, Lentils, Cania, St Clair and Glenbourne. Run us through that part of your life. Like, when you're on a roll, aren't you?
Yeah. And that's with fishing, it's momentum. And I was just sort of starting to get my confidence. You know, so many different things happened. Like one time before that, I remember I came like 10th at Boondooma, and when I walked up to the stage, I had my head down because I was disappointed. I come 10th out of and we had like 70 anglers or 70 boats at that event. Yeah. Scully rang me and like got real mad at me. He like made me cry. I still remember it on the phone. He was like, there was all these little things that happened, and then I was taking it so serious that like I was starting to not enjoy it, you know, much because it was just like I have to do well or I'm going to fail or this is going to happen. And then that's when I kind of ran into Timmy. And so Scully had said that to me, and I was like, man, sometimes it takes someone to say something to you to realise what you're sort of doing. I wasn't like laughing and having fun. It was dead serious all the time. And so then I ran into Timmy, and then we just hit it off, and it was just nonstop laughs. And he showed me like that you can have fun and laugh and do all of those things that we love about fishing and still be successful. You didn't have to be dead serious to be successful. So Tim taught me so much about that. And so when I went into that season, that was the momentum of that. And I was just enjoying it, having fun. Me and Tim were fishing together. We were a team. We were in the boat together. And we were, we would practice together back then, and we would just have fun. And I don't know what year that was, but this is how crazy it is. I've been with Humminbird my whole life, but we side imaged those bass at Cania on a Humminbird, was side imaging, and we saw them on the side imaging up the river sitting off that drop off. And I still remember those first couple of catches. I throw the bass man up there, and it was like a colour that I'd created with Glenn, and I was rolling it off the edge, and I'm like, it's touching the bottom, and I'm like, when it comes off, that's when they should hit it. And then those bass would just smash it. And, that we were wearing the Humminbird jerseys back then, but that was when that's when I learned so much about the technical side of things and the Humminbirds and the side imaging, and that's where all of that started. And so those 4 events were probably the most important 4, I'd say, where I just sort of proved myself that Lentils wasn't a fluke, or this win wasn't just a win. Like when I won on a Bassman, then I won, on a Jackal, then I won dropping soft plastics down the trees at Glenbourne. And then on top water, I was showing my versatility and how much I learnt. So that was probably the proudest year, I'd say, that I had in Australia, just because that's when I was starting to show, like, I'm not just here just lucky or just fishing or just for something. Of like, this is what I've been doing ever since I can remember, and now it's starting to show. Yeah.
Now, what happened was the season after that, I think, was the one where you fished and the stars didn't line up and you actually got kicked off the show, but what it resulted in was a job for you hosting on AFC, and so you built a lot of media skills that would have become very useful for you moving forwards.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, like, I look back so much. One of the probably best things that anyone's ever taught me was Gene, and everyone knows Gene Eisman's been a big mentor and friend of mine. And I was in a real low point over here, couldn't make it, struggling, and I think Chris was too, and I think he had his first loss in boxing. And we were Chris was over here training or doing something. We were kind of like, man, like we can't get anything going. It was a struggle and lots of stuff was happening to us. And Gene said, tell me something right now that you've been sick in the guts from, worried about, stressed about like crazy, that's still bad right now to this day. And so I started thinking of all these things, and I'm like, oh, this, and then as I would go to say it, I'd be like, oh, that worked out pretty good. And then Chris had come up with something, then he's like, oh no, if that didn't happen, this wouldn't have happened. And we started thinking of it, and so many of those things happened that I'm like, man, I wish I didn't stress so much about those things. And I stressed a lot that year, like, man, I got kicked out, it's the worst. But the best thing ever happened, I got to host the AFC with Adam and Beatty and learn so much from those guys, and like grew as then down the track I did Fox Sports interviews and on the Today Show, and those things, like I wouldn't have been able to do them without those smaller lead ups, without getting thrown into the deep end. I'd learned from the cameras, seen the guys working it, and then got to do it, and I got to sit back and see the guys fish, and it was just a big learning curve.
That's awesome, mate. Some of what we used to do in the old days, we had the big printed glossy tournament angler guide, which everyone looked forward to coming through. It was the days before social media, really, and it's a little bit more disjointed now, the media. But back in those days, we had the AFC profiles with the anglers' names and all the stats about them, and we had a few nicknames for you there that you acquired on tour, and I want you to tell me how you got them. Firstly, Hank Jr. Tell us that one. And if you don't, I'm going to. So I'm telling you now.
You might have to, because Hank's got to be something to do with, because I was using the jackal or lipless so much, and Harry was called Hank or something like that.
Harry, and we'll talk to Harry, I'm sure, on the show about how Hank was invented. But because you flogged Harry 4 times in a row in that season through, I'm pretty sure that you got the nickname Hank Jr. because of that, because you out-Hank himself.
Yeah.
The next one I've got is Pockets.
Yeah, I know that one.
that was the production crew, and why did they call you that?
Yeah, I always had my hands in my pockets, and they wanted them folded in front, but everyone else did, and I always had them in my pockets. So it was sleeve, and I got sleeves there at one stage because I had my sleeves all the time.
You were always like,
and this. I still do it.
That's right. And Rob Peel the whole time, Carl, pull your sleeves down. You pull them down, and then 2 seconds later they'd be up again. Yeah. It's like they had elastic in them, pulling them up your arms.
Yeah.
The other one was, I think this might be a Timmy nickname, the golden tapeworm.
Yeah, tapeworm is just from just how much I'd eat. It was just, and it's still the same, just bags of food in the boat, just never enough.
And the golden tapeworm, of course, because you ate all the food and won all the tournaments. So that's how some of those nicknames came around, mate. And for anyone listening now, hang around till the end of the show, because we've got a great eating story after the close of the show that's in the bloopers. I'll give you a heads up for that now.
You got to
any other nicknames I've missed out on, mate?
You got to ask Timmy about I forget who made them, but I think someone made. I think Sue. I think your mum made like these real good cookies, and she like left them out, like whatever they were, and I was just eating them like crazy. And then Tim went to have one, and he was like, they were gone. And he looked at me and he's like, how many did you have? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, you just ate all of my mum's like biscuits and I didn't get any. He's like, how do you feel? And I said, full. And he laughed. He chased me around a little bit after that.
Well, it's not hard to outrun Timmy, mate. If you win the first 2 steps, you got the race won.
A good couple steps.
Mate, we're gonna tie this segment up right now, but we're gonna come back in a while and take some questions from our viewers of the show. They've sent in on video, and we're gonna answer some of their questions. So we'll see you again soon.
Wait.